Welcome back. We're putting the spotlight on the power space, specifically India's drive to move towards non-fossil fuel sources of power, the whole renewable push. Mohit Bhargava, who is a senior advisor at the University of California, Berkeley, and of course, he's also been the former CEO of NTPC Green. He's with us, and we have Sumit Kishore, executive director at Axis Capital, to talk more about this. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining in. If I could actually start with you, Mr. Bhargava. Now, our ambitious, dream of reaching 500 gigawatts of capacity on the renewable side, I think last count, some notes that I read, by the end of 2024, we were roughly at about 209, 210 gigawatts. Some argue that the pace of movement is slow. What are the major challenges? I mean, I was reading somewhere that apparently 40 gigawatts of capacity is stalled because PPAs are not getting signed quickly enough. What is your assessment of how quickly we are moving towards this 500 gigawatts target, and what are the major issues, if any?
So good morning, and thank you for having me. Yes, we can always say that the speed is probably not at that level at which we are expecting to achieve our overall objective of 500 gigawatts by 2030. And yes, there are multiple challenges, and probably this has been discussed. This has been discussed at multiple levels. I could probably list down a few. Among them, of course, are land acquisition challenges. There are challenges with transmission evacuation. There are challenges with execution in terms of getting the PPAs off the ground, as you mentioned. So these are all challenges which are there. And in fact, there have been a lot of focus also, if I may say so, in terms of what's the support being provided. Because I think there's also one report which says that the government is actually again pushing the coal-based power. So it's also whether the question whether the government has kind of taken the foot off the pedal for renewables. I don't think so, but yes, those are all challenges which are there.
Is there a threat that we'll miss this target, 500 gigawatts by 2030? I mean, I don't get the sense, hearing you, that there's too much of an urgency that something needs to be done. I mean, if you just put it in perspective for us. Are we moving along at a fine pace?
I would say we are moving along at a fine pace, but there's always room for improvement. And 500 gigawatts, I must say, you see, that's a very good ambition to have. I am quite hopeful that we'll be ending up very close to that. But obviously, there are challenges. I mean, look, for example, transmission probably today is one of the biggest challenges because the pace at which the evacuation system is working is probably not in line with what the renewable energy producers want it to happen. And one of the reasons why, if you check with the CTU website, you'll find that there's a long queue for connection. And the earliest now apparently available is around 2029. So a lot of activity which is happening is also incumbent upon the fact that transmission needs to be pushed further quickly. Of course, there's also on the other side, even the capacity which is already operational. I understand there are challenges in actually pumping the entire power because there are probably some segments of the transmission system which are not up and running. So for example, if there's a 1,000 megawatt renewable project, it probably does not get fully scheduled for 1,000 megawatts also at various times during the day. So these are all challenges, and we need to move quickly on transmission.
Got that. There are questions whether the government has taken its foot off the pedal, but you don't think that is correct. We have Sumit Kishore also with us. Sumit, good to speak with you after a while.
Yes.
You want to reflect on some of what Mr. Bhargav said and your thoughts on this?
Yeah. Good morning, Prashant. I think to add to Mr. Bhargav, despite the on-ground challenges, India has added almost 33 gigawatt of capacity in FY25, an increase of almost 28% on a year-on-year basis. So if you think about it, 33 gigawatt is the highest capacity addition in a fiscal ever. The next highest was 30 gigawatt in FY16, which was at the peak of the thermal capacity additions in the last cycle. So out of 33 gigawatt, almost 24 gigawatt was solar, 4.3 gigawatt was wind. So it has been a decent outcome. What actually happened last fiscal was that the peak demand grew just 2.7%, which was quite weak. And post-COVID, you had the weakest power demand growth in the country of just about 4.2%. So weak power demand and declining battery and solar module prices have allowed DISCOMs more time to finalize their power procurement plans, as a result of which you see a large pileup of renewable letter of awards of over 40 gigawatt where PPAs have not been signed. I think this fiscal, again, so far, April power demand was just 2.2%. May power demand is down 2% year on year so far, and peak demand is at 231 gigawatt so far in May. And end of May last year, it was 250 gigawatt. So you're in a summer season where peak demand is actually down on a year-on-year basis. So I think more than the execution challenges have been evergreen. They will remain, but I think over the next 2-3 years, what is very important is that power demand growth, if it revives itself, you would basically find everything else falling in place. In FY26, the worst risk is that there is almost 8 gigawatt plus of coal capacity addition that could come on stream, even if there are 6-month delays versus CEA target. So, if that is accompanied with weak power demand and strong RE capacity addition, DISCOMs will be able to wait even more to sign PPAs.
I get that. Sumit, for the listed universe here, for your Varis and Premier and, what does this environment mean? Because then this will keep piling up. And there is a fair bit of demand, which is additional demand for solar modules, etc., which is coming up. And for these two companies specifically, this is basically there is strong demand, very strong demand for maybe 2 years. But then after that, what? Because there is a lot of capacity which is coming up. So, just your thoughts here.
India's power demand is a secular growth story. In the last 15 years, India's power demand grew at a CAGR of 5%. Possibly it can grow faster in the next 5 years because you have new levers of power demand growth like data centers, EV charging, green hydrogen. So I think there is a long runway of capacity addition that India can sustain. Think about it. Simple math is India had a 250 gigawatt peak demand last fiscal. If you have 6% power demand growth, that's 15 gigawatt. If you have to meet that using wind, solar, where the PLF profiles are lower, and even with a bit of thermal, you still have 40% say average PLF. So 15 divided by 0.4 is 37.5 gigawatt of capacity addition just to keep pace with the demand growth in the country. And that will keep growing every year. So there is a long runway. Let us not be very skeptic.
No, not at all. In fact, I was just looking at the trends, I think, out of April, that while overall demand was soft, this evening deficit issue always leads to spikes, right? And I believe on the exchange on IEX, prices were touching almost 10 rupees per unit, just to meet that short-term evening, demand deficit. Sumit, from the listed stocks point of view, and I'm not asking short-term, 1 or 2 months or 3 quarters, but if someone is to play the renewable theme from a portfolio perspective, then how would you advise them to do it? Would an integrated player like Tata, which is giving you both traditional as well as renewable, would that be the way to go? Power exchanges, stocks like Power Grid, etc. What do you play in the power supply chain?
No, almost across the board in power sector, we have seen over the last few years that the pace of capital expenditure has gone up meaningfully, led by green growth. And even aspirations for companies 5-6 years out have a meaningful compounding in EBITDA led by green growth aspirations. So companies which are able to sign PPAs and have decent visibility on earnings compounding, EBITDA compounding over next 2 to 3 years stand out. So in that bracket, you have companies like JSW Energy, which have seen a healthy dose of both organic and inorganic growth, and even Tata Power, which has a more integrated approach to not just IPP capacity addition, but solar equipment manufacturing and solar EPC, which is seeing decent growth. There is possibly the privatization of DISCOMs in UP, which is standing out as a big catalyst for companies in the sector, in the distribution space, including Tata Power, Torrent Power, CESC, and so on. So I think all in all, even exchanges are having a party right now because in the advent of weak power demand growth, there is a lot of coal availability. International coal prices are flattish, and you see that exchange prices, even though they are spiking in the evening, on a year-on-year basis, exchange prices are down 15-20% year-on-year, which is welcoming the discoms to come to exchanges, welcoming C&I customers to go to exchanges to optimize their power cost. So which basically means that exchanges saw earnings growth of 20% plus in the last financial year, and even so far this quarter volume growth has been quite strong despite power demand growth being weak in India. So I think this is a secular story where India will follow Europe and other developed markets, where over a period of time, penetration of short-term power supply in India will keep going up. 10 years back, we were at 3-4%. We are at 9% plus of total power supply in the country, which is being transacted on exchanges today. I think this will go up to 15-20% in the next few years.
Sumit, you said don't be too skeptical. In stock markets, always be skeptical.
Yes.
Even for the best laid stories. I think that's got to be the motto.
It was more from, operational and,
Yeah, no, I get that. My question, though, was only about Wari and Premier and, solar modules. It was not about the overall, how much will power demand grow? And you said those numbers, etc., all make sense. But my question was about these two. I mean, will there be overcapacity, which you yourself provided the context for?
No, so that's a separate question on the solar equipment manufacturers. I think India already has excess capacity for solar module assembly. We have crossed 70 gigawatt in terms of annual manufacturing capacity for solar modules. India is likely to achieve self-reliance for solar cells within a couple of years, and even backward integration of wafer ingot is likely to pick up sharply here on. But players who evolve their offerings in clean energy transition will be better off on margins and profitability, even as industry-wide ROCE normalizes with potential oversupply of the module manufacturing value chain. So I think India will have to find new export destinations like Middle East, because you can't, the geopolitical uncertainties and the flip-flop on decision-making or the uncertainty in US is likely to sustain. But if you have local manufacturing in US, for example, that could help you overcome some of this. And US is being quite skeptic of importing stuff from China or countries which are seen as fronts for China in Southeast Asian region. I think India will benefit out of these interventions.
Okay, all right, gentlemen, I think we're completely out of time. But just 10 seconds answer, just checking with Mr. Bhargava. So final word, we discussed a couple of issues that you highlighted, labor, PPAs, etc. Is labor availability at all an issue for the sector right now?
Yeah, it's always a challenge because renewable sector is labor intensive, especially during the execution phase. And just, if you allow a couple of more seconds, I just wanted to add to what Sumit said. I think you missed out on NTPC Green Mike's company, so that's also in a good space, if I may say so. So having said that, yes, you see, the story of renewables is good. And I just wanted to have a quick word also on the peak power, which you mentioned. And that's actually a good story for renewable space also, because a lot of storage, like RE plus storage tenders are there. And these are actually the most important plugs all the way out for meeting the peak demand, because whatever coal capacity is coming up, that will take its own time. What you start today will take at least 5 to 6 years. But this battery storage can actually come up within the next 12 months. So while India has moved on that, I think we need to step on the gas much faster, because that is where the peak power challenge will be taken care of. So that's one important thing which government, of course, is doing, but we need to get people, states and PPAs happening so that these things get off the ground.
Okay.
But yes, to answer your question on labor, that's always a challenge, because ultimately today a lot of work happening across the country in various sectors.
Sure.
At any given point of time during construction, you need a lot of people to get the project off the ground.
Absolutely. Well, we have some challenges, but then there's a big push. And perhaps these are not insurmountable issues. That's the sense we get after talking to both of you. Thank you very much for joining in. With that, we're completely out of time on this edition of Bazaar. So we're leaving the markets in a pretty good shape. Nifty's been chugging along this morning. Do stay tuned. Chartbusters will take the action forward.